So, hello people. So, nandito na naman tayo for another discussion about hedging. Pero ang topic na i-discuss natin for this video is about cash flow hedge. So, bago tayo mag-proceed sa ating illustrative problem, balikan muna natin yung ating concept about cash flow hedge. So, ang sabi dito sa ating matrix, kapag ang ating derivative instrument is designated as a hedging instrument in a cash flow hedge relationship, so dapat daw yung change sa value ng ating hedging instrument should be allocated sa effective and ineffective portion. Pag effective daw, yung amount allocated and assumed to be effective, yun daw ay ire-record under other comprehensive income. At ang term na ginagamit ng standard for the OCI account is the cash flow hedge reserve. So this is an OCI account. And yung amount daw na ina-allocate as ineffective, doon naman siya i-recognize sa profit or loss sa income statement. So for our discussion sa ating mga sasagutang illustrative problem later in this video, ang ating changes in the hedging instrument will be assumed to be effective. So, wala tayong amount na i-allocate as ineffective. So, which means lahat ng changes will be considered as effective. So, kaya mamaya, yung lahat ng amount na designated as hedging instrument, doon natin ilalagay sa OCI lahat ng ating changes. Kasi, for us to separate the effective and ineffective portion of the change in the value of the derivative, mahaba-habang discussion yon kasi minsan meron pa dong dapat i-discuss about hypothetical derivative which is masyado ng technical. Siyempre, dito lang muna tayo sa basic. Again, our assumption is that all changes in the value of our derivative instrument is considered as effective. Kaya, i-record natin lahat yon mamaya sa OCI. And kung titingnan nyo ang ating mga hedge items, meron tayong 4, diba? Pero among the 4 hedge items, yung forecasted transaction and net investment in foreign operation talaga ang ginagamitan ng cash flow hedge kapag sila yung designated as a hedge item. Pero for the recognized asset or liability and firm commitment, they can be hedged under cash flow hedge if the risk being hedged is a foreign currency exchange risk. Pero for this discussion sa ating video na to, ang i-discuss natin is hedge of forecasted transaction and firm commitment under cash flow hedge. Pero syempre, yung firm commitment natin, ang hina-hedge natin doon na risk is foreign currency exchange risk. So, yung hedge of net investment in foreign operation, that will be discussed in a separate video. So, hindi yun magiging part ng ating discussion for this video. So, ngayon, let us proceed to our first illustrative problem. So, let's start. So, this is a cash flow hedge daw of a forecast transaction to purchase. So, ibig sabihin tayo ay bibili. So, on August 1, 2020, 4 Ranger Professional Services Inc., whose functional currency is the Philippine peso, enters into a forward exchange contract to receive 1,500 pounds and deliver 97,950 pesos after 3 months with no initial cost. So, tayo daw ay nagkaroon ng forward contract. At sabi, sa forward contract daw is to receive 1,500 British pounds. At tayo ay magdi-deliver ng 97,950 pesos. Ibig sabihin, this is a forward contract to purchase. Ano ang bibilhin natin? 1,500 British pounds. At ang ibabayad natin is 97,950. Ito yung ating fixed price na ibabayad kasi i-deliver daw siya. So, kung ito ay fixed price na ibabayad natin, ibig sabihin, naka-fix na ang ating outflow at 97,950 pesos. Pero yung inflow natin, yung marireceive natin na 1,500 British pounds, syempre, hindi yon fix. Ang fix doon is yung British pounds. Pero syempre, since ang functional currency natin ay Philippine peso and this should be recorded in Philippine peso, our functional currency, so yung marireceive natin na Philippine peso value ng 1,500 pounds, which is the inflow, is hindi fix. So nagfa-fluctuate yon. So yun yung imo-monitor natin mamaya. So at inception daw, FRPSI designates the forward exchange contract as a hedging instrument in a cash flow hedge of a highly probable forecasted transaction to purchase an equipment with a 5-year useful life for 1,500 British pounds on October 30, 2020. So, tayo daw ay mayroong highly probable forecasted transaction. So, ito yung ating hedge item. Sabi natin, hindi basta-basta nagiging hedge item ang isang forecast transaction. In order for a forecasted transaction to become a hedge item, it should be highly probable. At ano daw ang ating forecasted transaction? Tayo ay bibili ng isang office equipment na may 5-year useful life at siya ay denominated in foreign currency, the British pounds. At ilan daw? 1,500 British pounds. At kailan ang expected date ng ating purchase? On October 30, 2020. So, ito yung ating hedge item at ang ating hedging instrument is yung forward contract to purchase 1,500 British pounds. So, sabi, the entity prepares monthly financial statements and it is assumed that all conditions for hedge accounting are met. The forward contract is to be settled on a net cash basis. So, ibig sabihin, kung ito ay net cash basis, wala talaga tayong marireceive na 1,500 British pounds kasi net cash basis. So, again, when we say net cash basis, walang actual delivery ng ating foreign currency. Ang magiging settlement lang at settlement date is either tayo ba ay magkakaroon ng inflow or outflow. Depende kung ano mas malaki, yung outflow or yung inflow. So, ngayon, nandito na tayo sa ating Excel file. So, bago tayo mag-start ng ating preparation ng journal entry, ganun uli ang ating gawin muna natin yung ating schedule for the monitoring ng changes in the exchange rates. Pero this time, isa na lang ang ating gagawa ng monitoring ng fluctuation ng exchange rates. So, this will be for the hedging instrument only. Kasi nga, ang ating hedge item dito is a forecasted transaction. So, sa forecasted transaction, unlike firm commitment, sabi natin, ang forecasted transaction ay hindi committed, pero highly probable. So, ibig sabihin, malaki pa rin yung chance na mangyayari yung ina-anticipate nating transaction in the future. Kasi nga siya ay highly probable. Pero, dahil hindi nga siya committed, so hindi guaranteed na mangyayari to. Iba ang ating accounting treatment for a forecasted transaction. So, for our hedge item, the forecasted transaction, during the term of the forward contract, wala tayong corresponding journal entry for the hedge item. Pero for the hedging instrument, meron tayong journal entries. Pero dito sa ating hedge item na forecasted transaction, again, during the term of the forward contract, wala tayong journal entry. Ang magiging journal entry lang natin for the hedge item will be on October 30, 2020, which is the date we forecasted a purchase transaction. Kung kailan natin ina-expect na itong office equipment na to ay bibilhin natin at 1,500 British pounds, and that is on October 30, 2020. So, dito lang tayo magkakaroon ng journal entry for the hedge item at the forecasted transaction. So, dahil yan lang ang journal entry natin for the hedge item, dito tayo sa hedging instrument kasi ito yung may journal entries simula August 1 hanggang October 30. So, kaya kailangan natin i-monitor yung changes in the exchange rates. So, let's start. So, let's start on the date of inception, August 1, 2020. So, again, let's start with a notional amount of 1,500 British pounds. So, tapos, i-multiply natin to sa ating forward rate. So, dahil ang petsa natin ay August 1, 2020, at ang settlement date natin ay October 30, 2020, ibig sabihin, meron tayong 90 days after August 1 until October 30, the settlement date. And since 90 days pa ang natitira until the settlement date, ang gagamitin nating forward rate syempre is the 90-day forward rate of 65.30. So ano ibig sabihin ng 65.30? Ito daw ang ina-expect nating magiging spot rate 90 days after August 1, 2020. And that is on October 30, 2020, the settlement date. So ngayon, i-multiply na natin. 1,500 multiplied by 65.30. Ang sagot dyan ay 97,950. At ano itong 97,950? Is this an inflow or an outflow? Ang sabi natin dito, ang ating hedging instrument is a forward contract to receive 1,500 British pounds and deliver 97,950 pesos. Ibig sabihin, ito ay forward contract to purchase. Ano ang bibilhin natin? 1,500 British pounds. At ang ibabayad natin is a fixed price of 97,950. So, itong 97,950 na to, ito ay outflow. So, fixed na to. So, ibig sabihin, yung ating outflow after 3 months is fixed. So, kung ang outflow is already fixed, ang hindi fixed is yung magiging inflow natin on settlement date. So, makakatanggap tayo kasi ng 1,500 British pounds. Pero, syempre, ang tinutukoy nating hindi fixed is yung Philippine peso value kasi fixed na itong 1,500 British pounds. Ang hindi fixed is yung Philippine peso value ng matatanggap natin at settlement date. At ito nga yung kinocompute natin. Yung minomonitor natin due to changes in the forward rate. So, yung 97,950, that will be the inflow or expected inflow at settlement date based on forward rate. Tapos, syempre, kailangan natin kumputin yung changes. Kasi yung changes, yun yung lumilitaw sa financial statements. Yung cumulative at yung for the month. So, unahin natin yung cumulative, which is the derivative, either an asset or a liability. So, again, yung change na to is due to the changes in the forward rate. At meron na ba tayong change in the forward rate as of this date? Syempre, wala pa kasi ito pa lang ang inception date. Ibig sabihin, 0 pa ang ating derivative. Wala pang value ang derivative on this date kasi wala pang change in the forward rate. At sabi rin dito, we have no initial cost. Ibig sabihin, hindi tayo nagbayad ng any premium at date of inception. Kaya 0 pa to. And syempre, kung yung cumulative wala rin tayong i-recognize na gain or loss as of this date kasi nga wala pang change. So now let us proceed to the next date, August 31, 2020 kasi nga we are preparing monthly financial statements. So ibig sabihin, we are going to monitor again the change in the forward rate as of the end of August. So let's start with the notional amount, 1,500 British pounds, and again multiply this by the forward rate as of this date, which is 65.47. At saan ang galing to? So, eto yun. So, ano ang ibig sabihin ng 65.47? So, ito daw yung ina-expect nating magiging spot rate 60 days after August 31, the current date. At kailan daw yun? Siyempre, the settlement date. So, i-multiply na natin. That is 98,205 Philippine peso. So, ito na ngayon ang bago nating ina-expect na magiging inflow based on the forward rate. And since meron ng change in the forward rate, meron tayong makukompute na changes. Unahin natin ang cumulative. Actually, parehas naman yan sila kasi ito pa lang yung first change after the inception date. So, for the derivative, we have a 255 pesos. Ito ay positive. So, ito ay asset. Kasi, bakit? Kasi tumaas ang inflow from 97 naging 98,000. And syempre, dahil naging asset ang ating derivative, gain yan na 255 pesos. Now, let us proceed to the next date, that is on September 30, 2020. So, ganun pa rin ang procedure. Let us compute the expected inflow based on the forward rate. So, 1,500, the notional amount, multiplied by the forward rate on this date, that is 65.20. So, ito yon. Bakit 65.20? Kasi daw, itong 65.20 ang ina-expect nating magiging spot rate 30 days after September 30, 2020, and that is on October 30, 2020, the settlement date. So, pag minultiply natin ngayon yan, ang sagot ay 97,800 Philippine peso. And nagkaroon na naman ng change in the forward rate. So, magkano yung cumulative change? So, ito yung change from the date of inception. So, yan ay 150 pesos. And siya daw ay negative. Bakit? Kasi bumaba siya. Bumaba ang ating inflow. Kung cumulative, syempre, 97,950. Dito tayo magsa-start. So, from 97,950 daw, as of the current date, September 30, ang expected inflow na lang is 97,800. So, bumaba ang ating inflow, so siya ay negative 150, which will be presented in the liability section on this date. So, ito ang cumulative change that will appear in the balance sheet. So, ano naman ang lilitaw sa ating income statement? Siyempre yung for the month, the gain or loss. So, dahil ito ay for the month, so ang i-compare natin is itong 98,205 at 97,800. At ang gain or loss natin is negative 405. That will be a loss kasi yan ang difference ng dalawa. From 255 na asset, naging negative 150. O kaya naman, 97,800 minus 98,205. Then lastly, let us proceed to the date of settlement, October 30, 2020. So this time, hindi na expected inflow at hindi na forward rate ang ating gagamitin. Kasi ito na yung date of settlement. So ang ating basis na ng computation is the spot rate. So let's start with the notional amount. So ang notional amount, 1,500 British pounds multiplied by the spot rate on this date, that is 65.17. So dito na lang sa column na to, pero ibahin natin yung kulay kasi ito ay spot rate. So ang forward rates talaga natin is from August 1 until September 30 lang. Then multiply 65.17 by 1,500 British pounds. So ang ating Philippine peso equivalent ng ating actual inflow, again, actual inflow na to, that is 97,755 Philippine peso. So ngayon, let us compute the changes in the exchange rates. So, dun muna tayo sa cumulative. Starting August 1, from 97,950, naging 97,755. So, obviously, bumaba siya. So, negative pa din ang ating result. Pero magkano na siya? 195. And kung for the month naman, ito ang ating comparison. From 97,800, naging 97,755. So, mag-recognize tayo for the month ng 45 pesos loss. Bakit loss? Kasi tumaas ang ating liability. From 150, naging 195. O kaya, bumaba ang inflow. From 97,800, naging 97,755. So ngayon, pwede na tayo mag-prepare ng journal entry. So let's start. So ngayon, let's start our journal entry starting with the hedge item. So syempre, to start the journal entry, dapat may date. Merong account title, tas debit and credit columns. So sabi nga natin, on August 1, 2020, wala pa tayong journal entry for the forecasted transaction. So ang ating journal entry lamang for the forecasted transaction will be on October 30, 2020. The date of the actual purchase transaction kung bibili tayo ng ating office equipment. Again, during the term of the forward contract, walang journal entry related to the hedge item. Ang magiging journal entry lang natin is the actual purchase on October 30, 2020. Kaya, on August 31, wala tayong entrada, pati sa September 30, 2020. Wala rin tayong entrada. So, doon na tayo sa hedging instrument. So, ano yung mga entries natin for the hedging instrument on August 1, August 31, and September 30? So, dito tayo titingin sa ating schedule. So, for the hedging instrument, dalawa ang gagawin ko. So, ano yung dalawang yon? So, ito ang gagawin ko. Sabi natin, sabi ng standard, a qualifying instrument must be designated in its entirety as a hedging instrument. Ibig sabihin, unang option natin is to designate the hedging instrument in whole. Ibig sabihin lahat. yung buong changes in the value of the derivative instrument will become the hedging instrument. Or may exception. And since ang ating derivative instrument ay forward contract, dito tayo sa second bullet. Sabi niya, separating the forward element and spot element of a forward contract and designating as the hedging instrument only the change in the value of the spot element of a forward contract and not the forward element. So, ibig sabihin, for forward contract, meron tayong dalawang option. Una is, i-designate natin yung buong changes in its entirety as the hedging instrument. O kaya naman, i-separate daw ang forward element from the spot element. At yung change lang sa spot element ang considered as the hedging instrument. So, dahil meron tayong dalawang option, dalawa ang gagawin ko. I-illustrate natin kung paano siya kung ang ating forward contract will be designated in its entirety. Ibig sabihin, kasama yung spot at kasama yung forward element sa ating hedging instrument. At kapag isa-separate natin yung spot from the forward element. So ngayon, for the hedging instrument, ang unahin natin is if ang ating forward contract is designated in its entirety as the hedging instrument. Ibig sabihin, hindi pa natin isa-separate yung spot element from the forward element. Ibig sabihin, ang forward element is included in the hedging relationship. So, let's start. So, anong ating basis ng ating journal entry? Ang gagamitin ba natin ay gross or net? And sabi dito, the forward contract is to be settled on a net cash basis. So, ang gagamitin natin is net cash settlement basis na journal entry. Kaya, ibig sabihin, kung tayo ay net cash basis, wala tayong actual delivery, ibig sabihin, ang tanging journal entry lang natin for the forward contract pertains to the changes. So, changes lang ang ating i-record kapag tayo ay net cash settlement. So, ito lang ating titingnan, yung dulong column for our journal entry. So, dahil tayo ay date of inception, August 1, sabi rito, wala pang laman to kasi nga, wala pang change. At tanging change lang ang nire-record kapag net cash settlement. Kaya on this date for the hedging instrument, tayo pa ay no entry. Pero syempre, it doesn't mean wala talagang entry. Ang tinutukoy natin ditong no entry is walang journal entry. Pero meron tayo syempre memorandum entry. We need to state or narrate or describe the terms of the forward contract. So, punta na tayo sa isa pang petsa. So, August 31, 2020. So, meron na tayo ritong change. May i-recognize daw tayong gain na 255. So, pag nag-recognize tayo ng gain na 255, syempre, we need to recognize also a derivative which is an asset of 255 pesos. So, kaya tayo ay debit forward contract asset which is the derivative account, 255. So, ito yung para sa cumulative change. This will appear in the statement of financial position. Then, credit tayo ng gain. Gain or loss on forward contract, OCI, 255. So, ngayon, etong ating gain or loss will appear in the OCI account. Hindi ito lilitaw sa ating income statement. Again, ito ay sa other comprehensive income. So, ngayon, let us proceed to the next date, September 30, 2020. So, for September 30, 2020, sabi rito sa last column, meron tayong loss to be recognized na 405. So, ibig sabihin, debit tayo ng loss. Pero, syempre, OCI. Kasi mag-a-appear ito sa OCI kasi nga tayo ay cash flow hedge. Magkano? 405 pesos. And credit tayo ng forward contract liability. Bakit forward contract liability? Kasi kung titingnan mo ang ating schedule, ang ating derivative daw is now at 150 pesos pero negative. Siya na ngayon ay may credit balance. So, liability na siya at 150. So, dapat may 150 dito. Tapos, dahil ang derivative natin is now a liability, so kailangan nating tanggalin yung forward contract asset na 255. Kaya, credit tayo ng forward contract asset 255. So this time, ang ginamit kong account title for the derivative account is either an asset or a liability. So, unlike doon sa discussion ko sa fair value hedge, ang alam ko, offsetting account yon na isang account title lang ang ginamit ko. So, doon sa fair value hedge, ang ginamit nating account title, kapag meron siyang debit balance, asset siya. Kapag siya ay may credit balance, liability siya. Pero this time, dito sa ginawa ko rito, hindi na siya offsetting account. Kaya dapat i-recognize natin itong forward contract asset kasi ngayong September 30, liability na siya. Kaya ibang account title na gagamitin natin, forward contract liability. So ngayon, punta na tayo sa date of settlement. So unahin natin yung hedge item. So sa hedge item, syempre hindi to date of settlement. Ito yung date na bibilhin na natin yung office equipment. So sabi dito yung office equipment daw is at 1,500 British pounds. So since ito ay actual purchase transaction on October 30, 2020, so ang gagamitin natin syempre is this spot rate. Kasi ito ay kailangang ma-record in Philippine Peso kasi ang ating functional currency is the Philippine Peso at alam naman natin na dapat ang ating libro ay nagre-record tayo ng transactions using the functional currency. So, tayo ay mag-debit ng office equipment. At magkano ang office equipment natin in Philippine Peso? Syempre yan ay 1,500 British pounds multiplied by the spot rate at date of purchase 65.17, that is 97,755 pesos. Tapos syempre tayo ay magka-credit ng cash. Ang cash na ating i-credit is British pounds. Bakit British pounds? Kasi syempre ang ibabayad natin ay hindi peso. Ang ibabayad natin ay British pounds. 1,500 kasi nga ito ay isang foreign currency transaction. Pero syempre, it should be recorded in Philippine Peso kasi nga ang functional currency is Philippine Peso. At ang kanyang peso equivalent is 97,755 pesos. So ngayon, syempre, on this date, may entrada rin sa hedging instrument kasi ito ang kanyang settlement date. So, ano ang entrada natin for the hedging instruments? Syempre, yung change uli. Sabi rito, may loss tayo na i-recognize na 45 pesos. So, debit tayo ng loss OCI for 45 pesos. At bakit daw? Kasi we need to increase the derivative, the liability. So, credit tayo ng forward contract liability at 45 kasi from 150 dapat magiging 195. So, ngayon, we are done with the adjustments. So, after ng journal entry natin na to, based on our schedule, ang forward contract liability natin is at 195 pesos. So, ang derivative natin as of this date is liability. Tapos, meron pa tayong isang real account. Since ito ay cash flow hedge, ang sabi natin, any gain or loss in the hedging instrument must be recorded in other comprehensive income o yung term na cash flow hedge reserve. So, ibig sabihin, real account din yun na makikita sa balance sheet. At ang OCI balance natin is 255, 405, at 45. Since malaki yung nasa debit, so debit balance siya, which is a loss. At ang difference ng debits and credit is 195. So, mayroon ding 195 na lilitaw in the other comprehensive income. Pero debit balance kasi loss. So, ibig sabihin, in cash flow hedge, meron tayong forward contract liability at 195. Siyempre, sa liability section yon. Tapos, meron din tayong OCI sa balance sheet din. Pero debit balance, loss siya as of this date. So, ngayon, syempre, date of settlement to, kailangan natin itong isettle. So, paano natin isettle? Ito ay net cash basis. Ibig sabihin, walang magiging actual delivery. So, kung tayo rito ay forward contract to purchase 1,500 British pounds, hindi tayo makaka-receive talaga ng 1,500 British pounds kasi nga walang actual delivery. Ang magiging settlement natin is yung difference between the inflow and the outflow. So, i-compare na natin. So, ang inflow natin, which is the actual inflow based sa ating schedule, is 97,755. So, ito na yung final kasi based na to sa spot rate. Pero ang ating actual outflow based sa contract is 97,950 which is fixed. So, yan. So, anong mas malaki? Siyempre, ang mas malaki ay outflow. So, anong difference ng dalawa? Yan ay 195 pesos. And since mas malaki ang outflow, ibig sabihin, unfavorable ang result ng forward contract sa atin. So, syempre, kahit yan ay unfavorable, since ito ay forward contract, wala tayong choice. Kasi ang holder, which is tayo, meron tayong obligation. So, kung ito ay obligation, wala tayong choice kundi gawin kung ano yung terms ng contract. So, ibig sabihin, yung 195, kailangan natin niyang bayaran kasi mas malaki ang outflow. So, let's record the settlement. So, to settle, syempre, debit tayo ng forward contract liability at 195. So, ibig sabihin daw kung ano pala yung balanse ng ating derivative, yun yung ating isa-settle. Since liability yung balanse, tapos 195. So, magbabayad tayo kasi liability. Tapos kung ano yung balanse niya, yun na yung ating payment. Kaya tayo ay mag-credit cash. Anong cash? Yan ba ay British pounds o peso? Siyempre peso yan. So, credit cash in Philippine peso, 195 pesos. So, ngayon, we are done with our journal entry for the settlement of our forward contract. So, nabayaran na natin yung ating obligation. So, ano nang next? So, ngayon, dahil ito ay hedging, ang purpose ng ating hedging is dapat magkaroon ng offsetting. At ano yung offsetting na nangyayari dapat? So, yung offsetting dapat is yung offsetting ng mga changes in the value ng hedge item at ng hedging instrument. So, supposedly, dapat meron tayong nire-record na changes ng value ng hedge item at meron din tayong nire-record na changes sa value ng hedging instrument. And itong mga changes na to ay mag-o-offset. So, saan mag-o-offset itong mga changes na to? So, normally, itong mga changes ng hedging instrument, dapat i-offset niya ang changes sa hedge item sa profit or loss. So, normally sa income statement nangyayari ang offsetting. Pero kung titingnan nyo rito ang ating hedge item, starting August 1 until October 30, wala tayong ni-record na changes sa value ng hedge item kasi nga ang ating hedge item is a forecasted transaction. So, wala tayong nire-record na journal entries. So, ibig sabihin, during these dates, walang effect itong hedge item natin sa profit or loss. So, wala tayong i-offset on these dates. So, kung wala tayong i-offset sa profit or loss in these dates, dapat wala rin tayong pang-offset. Wala tayong dapat i-record na changes sa value ng hedging instrument in these dates na lilitaw sa profit or loss kasi wala naman siyang i-offset doon. Yun nga lang, we need to record the changes in the forward rate affecting the hedging instrument. Pero kung titingnan nyo, simula kanina pa, nung nag-record tayo ng changes in the value of our hedging instrument, hindi natin sa P&L nire-record yung gain or loss. Nire-record natin siya sa other comprehensive income. So bakit natin siya nire-record sa other comprehensive income? Kasi nga, hindi pa siya pwede sa profit or loss. Kasi walang sense kung sa profit or loss mo siya i-record in these dates. Kasi nga, wala pa siyang i-offset dito sa petsa na to related sa hedge item. Kaya, for the meantime, dito muna sila sa other comprehensive income. Tapos, i-reclassify na lang natin from OCI to profit or loss kapag mangyayari na yung offsetting. At kailan natin i-reclassify itong other comprehensive income to profit or loss? Sabi ko nga, kapag magkakaroon na ng offsetting. So, kailan mangyayari yung offsetting? So, mangyayari ang offsetting kapag ang ating hedge item ay nagkaroon na ng effect sa profit or loss. So, dahil magkakaroon na ng effect ang hedge item sa profit or loss, that is the time na pwede na nating ilabas yung nilagay natin sa OCI papuntang profit or loss para ma-offset na niya yung corresponding account recorded in the profit or loss related to the hedge item. So again, yung OCI nating account, kailangan niyang i-reclassify sa profit or loss. Kailan siya i-reclassify sa profit or loss? Kapag nagkaroon na ng effect si hedge item sa profit or loss. Para yung effect sa profit or loss ni hedge item, ma-offset yon nung OCI na previously recorded dito sa ating hedging instrument. So, ang tanong is, paano natin i-reclassify yung OCI papuntang profit or loss? So, meron tayong dalawang ways. Ang sabi rito, the cash flow hedge reserve in OCI under cash flow hedge is reclassified in profit or loss. The reclassification depends whether the hedge item resulted to a financial or non-financial asset or liability. Una, i-adjust daw yung OCI, the cash flow hedge reserve, sa initial cost. O kaya naman, kung hindi mo i-adjust yung initial cost, i-transfer mo na lang sa P&L kung yung asset or liability nagkaroon na ng effect sa P&L. At ano yung asset and liability? Ito, financial asset or liability at non-financial asset or liability. Kung yung hedge item daw nag-result sa financial asset or liability, meron ka lang isang option. Ang option mo lang, ilalabas mo lang yung OCI sa P&L kung etong financial asset or liability already affected the P&L. Pero kapag ang iyong asset or liability is non-financial in nature, ito yung nag-result sa hedge item, may dalawa kang option. Una is pwede mo daw i-adjust yung initial cost. So dito mo ilalabas yung OCI, pang-adjust sa initial cost ng non-financial asset or liability. Pero this is only applicable to a forecasted transaction. Tapos, kung ayaw mo naman yan, pwedeng ito. I-transfer mo daw yung OCI papunta sa P&L every time na itong non-financial asset or liability affects the profit or loss. So, gawin natin ito. Since ang ating asset na binili resulting from the hedge item is an office equipment, so yun ay non-financial asset. So, gawin natin tong dalawang options na to. So, unahin natin yung adjustment to initial cost. So, ito yung ating first way to reclassify yung OCI to, so, adjustment to the initial cost. Ang initial cost ng ating office equipment is 97,755 pesos. So, ibig sabihin, ito daw ay i-adjust natin, either dadagdagan or babawasan. And since ang ating OCI ay may balance na 195 pesos at siya ay debit balance, loss siya. So, isasara natin yun ng buo. So, para isara yung loss na OCI, dapat credit. At syempre, may debit. Anong i-debit? Yung office equipment, yung non-financial asset. Ibig sabihin, kapag loss, siya ay addition to the cost of the non-financial asset or a deduction from the non-financial liability. So, kaya debit tayo office equipment, 195 pesos. And credit yung OCI na account at 195 pesos. So, nag-zero out na yung ating OCI dito after this entry, after we adjusted the cost of the non-financial asset. So, dito, nag-result siya sa increase in office equipment kasi nga unfavorable yung result ng ating forward contract. So, instead na mapababa natin yung cost ng office equipment, since unfavorable nga yung forward contract, mas naging mahal patuloy ang ating office equipment kasi nadagdagan yung cost. So, 97,775 plus 195 pesos. So, magkano na siya? Siya na ngayon ay at 97,950 pesos. So, ngayon, ang sabi natin, ang OCI should be reclassified to profit or loss. Hindi naman natin sa profit or loss siya nilabas kasi in-adjust natin siya sa initial cost ng ating office equipment. So, paano siya magkakaroon effect sa profit or loss? So, magkakaroon siya effect sa profit or loss through depreciation. Kapag nag-record na tayo ng depreciation for the equipment. So, paano tayo mag-record ng depreciation? Siyempre, debit tayo ng depreciation expense. Magkano? Based na doon sa adjusted value ng ating office equipment. At yun ay 97,950. So, naka-fix na yung ating office equipment sa 97,950. So, mas tumaas siya compared doon sa amount na binili natin yung initial cost. Kasi nga, unfavorable yung ating forward contract. So, instead na makatipid tayo, na pamahal pa tayo. So, again, ang ating adjusted cost is 97,950 tapos divided by 5 kasi 5 years and straight line method of depreciation ang gagamitin. Then times 2 months divided by 12. Bakit 2 months? Kasi nabili natin ang ating office equipment ng October 30, 2020. So ibig sabihin, 2 months pa lang natin siya nagagamit for the year. So magkano yon? That is 3,265 pesos. And syempre tayo ay credit accumulated depreciation, 3,265 pesos. So, in this way, in recording depreciation, na-reclassify natin yung OCI into P&L. Then, punta tayo ngayon dun sa next method natin to reclassify the cash flow hedge reserve to P&L. And that is when the non-financial asset or liability affects the profit or loss. So, that is the time when we should reclassify the OCI to P&L. And again, ang ating non-financial asset is an office equipment. And how does the office equipment affects the income statement? Siyempre, through depreciation expense. Kapag nagre-record na tayo ng depreciation expense. So, doon nakaka-apekto ang office equipment sa P&L. So, doon din tayo magre-reclassify from OCI to P&L. Pero bago natin i-reclassify, i-record muna natin yung depreciation expense ng ating equipment. So, debit tayo depreciation expense. Magkano? Siya ay 3,258.50. At paano ito na-compute? Siya ay 97,755 divided by 5 years times 2 months divided by 12. So, bakit ito ang basis natin? Ito lang 97,755 kasi ang ginamit natin is yung option B. Hindi natin in-adjust yung initial cost ng equipment. Kaya dito sa letter B, ang basis natin ng depreciation expense is ito, 97,755. Then credit tayo accumulated depreciation also at 3,258.50. So, since nagkaroon na siya ng effect sa P&L, dito na rin tayo ngayon magre-reclassify ng ating OCI to P&L. So, paano? So, i-adjust natin yung depreciation expense. So, kaya tayo ay magde-debit ng depreciation expense. Magkano? So, ang basis natin syempre yung balance ng OCI, which is 195 loss. So, yung amount na ilalagay natin dito is computed similarly to 3,258.50. So, para din siya nagko-compute ng depreciation expense. So, 195 pesos divided by 5 years times 2 months divided by 12 months. That is 650 pesos. So, yan ang ating ni-reclassify from OCI to P&L. At credit tayo ng gain or loss on forward contract, OCI, also at 650 pesos. So, this time, ang reclassification natin ay paunti-unti. So, mauubos lang yung OCI dito sa second option at the end of the useful life of the office equipment. So, mas mahirap mag-reclassify ng OCI to P&L kapag etong pinili mo yung second option. Kasi every recording ng depreciation expense natin, doon na tayo magkakaroon ng reclassification. Unlike dito sa first option, once na in-adjust mo na ng buo yung OCI sa initial cost ng office equipment, so hindi mo na kailangang i-monitor pa yung reclassification kasi yung depreciation expense mo adjusted na siya noong OCI na account. Pero regardless of the option, parehas pa din ang depreciation expense. That will be 3,265 pesos. Kasi pag pinag-add mo to, 3,258.50 plus 650, ang sagot ay parehas pa din, 3,265 pesos ang depreciation na mag-a-appear sa income statement. So again, regardless of the option, ang depreciation expense ay parehas. Mag-iiba lang sila sa kung paano na-reclassify yung OCI papuntang P&L. Tsaka ang tatandaan nyo, ang kapartner na nitong depreciation expense this time is the OCI account. Baka malito kayo bigla at ang i-credit nyo ay accumulated depreciation. So, hindi ka mag-accumulated depreciation dito kasi nga, ang accumulated depreciation should be based on the cost of the equipment. Kaya etong accumulated depreciation dito lang talaga siya naka-base. So, huwag kang magdadagdag dito ng accumulated depreciation. Tsaka pag hindi ka rito kasi nag-credit ng OCI, edi hindi mo rin sinasara yung OCI na account. So yun. So this is our journal entries for the hedge item and the hedging instrument if ang ating forward contract is designated as a hedging instrument in its entirety. Ibig sabihin again ng entirety, ang forward element at spot element ay parehas na magkasamang designated as part of the hedging instrument. So next naman, gawin natin paano naman kung ang hedging instrument ay hindi buo. Ibig sabihin, excluded na ang forward element at tanging yung spot element lang ang magiging part ng hedging instrument. So ngayon, ang next naman natin gagawin is paano ang ating accounting for the hedging instrument kung ang ating forward contract, yung changes sa value ng ating forward contract will be separated into the spot element and forward element. So, bakit natin kailangan i-separate yung amount attributable to the spot element and the forward element? Kasi yung amount attributable to the change in the forward element, this will be excluded as part of the hedging instrument at only the change related to the change in the value of the spot element is included in the hedging instrument. Ibig sabihin, ito lang talaga yung gagamitin nating pang-offset. So, ito lang ang gagamitin natin for hedging purposes. Etong related kay forward element, hindi ito gagamitin for hedging purposes. So, i-split muna natin. So, ngayon, paano natin siya i-split? So, ito ang ating formula to compute for the fair value of the spot element at ng forward element. Sabi rito, ang value daw ng forward has two elements. Meron siyang fair value of the spot element and the forward element. Tapos, yung total nito, ito na yung total value or fair value ng ating derivative instrument. Actually, etong amount na to, yung total value of forward, ito yung nag-a-appear sa statement of financial position either as an asset or a liability. So, paano natin makukompute etong tatlong to, yung total, yung spot, tsaka yung forward? So, dito, yung total value of the forward, ito yung cumulative change in the forward rate, which is yung lagi natin kinocompute simula pa lang kahit nung tayo ay nasa fair value hedge pa lang na discussion. So how about the fair value of spot element? So for the spot element daw, cumulative change din siya. Pero cumulative change in the spot rate. So ibig sabihin, both the value of the forward at yung spot element niya, ito ay computed as the cumulative change. Yun nga lang, magkaiba ang kanilang basis. Kasi for the forward as a whole, ito ay nakabase sa forward rate. Pero yung spot element, syempre nakabase ito sa spot rate. Then, how do we compute for the fair value of the forward element? Ito lang ay difference between the total fair value of the forward and fair value of the spot element. So, kumbaga, itong forward element, this is the residual amount after we deduct the fair value of the spot element from the value of the forward contract. So, gawin na natin. So, ngayon, balik tayo rito sa ating schedule. At kung titingnan nyo yung ating schedule, in-split ko na yung cumulative change sa ating mga monthly changes, yung for the month. So, meron tayo ditong magiging tatlong column for the cumulative change at dito sa monthly changes. So, etong first column natin dito sa mga changes natin, ito na yung total. So, kanina, ito yung na-compute natin, yung derivative, yung cumulative change. So, ito yung lumilitaw sa statement of financial position na either as an asset or a liability. And yung changes niya rito, ito yon, yung monthly changes na nirecord natin dito kanina. Ito yung tinutukoy natin, hindi natin i-split. And ang ating gagawin ngayon ay ihihiwalay natin yung spot element at yung forward element nitong total change na ito. So, again, ang ating elements ay yung spot elements at forward element. So, ganun din sa monthly changes. Nakahiwalay din ang spot tsaka forward. Kaya kung titingnan nyo rito, ang forward element daw rito ay excluded. Hindi siya kasama sa ating hedging instrument. Ang tanging kasama is yung spot element. At kung papansinin nyo, nakalagay dito, effective. So, ibig sabihin, mamaya kapag tayo ay nag-record ng ating journal entry, etong portion lang na to ang ating i-recognize sa other comprehensive income. So ngayon, compute na natin yung spot element and forward element. So syempre ngayon, between spot element and forward element, ang una nating kukumputin should be the spot element. Kasi nga, yung forward element is just the residual after we deduct spot element from the total value of the forward contract, the derivative. So, unahin natin yung spot element. And to compute for the spot element, sabi natin, ito yung cumulative changes in the spot rate. So, compute natin yung changes in the spot rate. So, let's start on the date of inception, August 1. So, ang ating spot rate on this date is 65.35. So, i-multiply natin to sa notional amount natin na 1,500 British pounds. So, 1,500 British pounds multiplied by 65.35, yan ay 98,025. So, ano yung 98,025 na yan? So, yan yung ating expected inflow at spot rate. Kung titingnan nyo dito sa taas, ang ginawa natin, inflow siya pero based on forward rate. And this time, since spot element ang kinukompute natin, so yung inflow naman natin dito ay naka-base naman sa spot rate. So, 98,025. So, again, ang kinukompute natin is change in the spot rate. So, meron na ba tayong cumulative change? Since ito ay date of inception pa lang at wala pa talagang change, so 0 pa ito. So, ngayon, let us proceed to the next date, August 31. So, magkano na ang spot rate on this date? Meron tayong 65.30. At i-multiply natin ito sa notional amount na 1,500 British pounds at ang sagot ay 98,100. So, meron na tayong change kasi nagbago na ang ating spot rate. So, ang change natin is 75 pesos positive, which is a gain. So, bakit siya gain? Kasi tumaas ang ating inflow based on spot rate. From 98,025 naging 98,100. Tapos, ngayon, punta naman tayo sa September 30. So, ang spot rate on this date is 65.28. Then, i-multiply natin ito sa ating notional amount. So, that is 97,920. So, magkano ang cumulative change? So, since cumulative change, dapat starting date of inception. From 98,025, naging 97,920 ang inflow. So, bumaba ang inflow, kaya yan ay negative 105. Then, next date tayo, the settlement date, October 30, 2020. So, ang spot rate dito is 65.17 at i-multiply ito sa notional amount. Ang sagot ay 97,755. At ang cumulative change natin is 270. So, from 98,025, the inflow based on the August 1 spot rate hanggang sa naging 65.17 spot rate at date of settlement, naging 97,755. Kaya ang cumulative change natin is a decrease of 270. So, ngayon, nakompute na natin yung cumulative change ng spot rates. So, compute na ngayon natin yung forward element. So, again, ang sabi natin, to compute for the forward element, ito yung difference between the total value of the derivative and the spot element. So, etong nandito sa last column ng ating spot element na schedule, ilalagay lang natin dito. Then, gagawin lang nating squeeze amount yung forward element. So, let's start on August 31. So, syempre sa August 31 na tayo magsa-start kasi 0 din naman ang spot element natin as of August 1. So, kung 0 ang spot element natin ng August 1, so 0 din ang forward element kasi 0 ang total value ng derivative on August 1, the inception date. So, kaya tayo ay pumunta na sa August 31. So, sabi dito sa ating schedule, meron tayong 75 pesos positive. So, ilalagay natin yun dito, 75. At ang forward element natin is 255 minus 75. That is 180. Again, ang forward element is the difference between the total value of the derivative and the fair value of the spot element. So ngayon, for September 30, sabi rito may negative 105 tayo, cumulative change in the spot rate. Kaya ang spot element natin is negative 105. So ang ating forward element is negative 45 pesos. Paano na-compute yan? Siyempre, negative 150 minus negative 105. So, ang difference siyempre is negative 45. So, ganun din for October 30. Sabi rito, ang cumulative change on the spot rate is 270 negative. So, ilalagay natin yan dito. So, to compute for the forward element, negative 195 minus negative 270. Ang sagot ay 75 pesos positive. So, ito yung ating forward element as of October 30. And again, itong schedule na to is the cumulative change. Siyempre, kung may cumulative change, dapat meron tayong for the month. We need to compute for the monthly changes in the total value of the derivative, the spot element, and forward element. Kasi ito na yung lumalabas sa either other comprehensive income or profit or loss. So, unahin natin ang August 31. So, again, August 31 tayo mag-start kasi wala namang changes on August 1. So, for August 31, ang change sa spot element is 75 pesos. Siyempre, yan pa lang naman ang unang change natin. So, kung ano yung cumulative change. So, yun din yung ating for the month. And that will also apply for the forward element, 180. Then, for September 30, ang change natin for the month of September related to the spot element is 180 negative. At paano ito na-compute? So, na-compute yan as the difference between 75 and 105. So, na-compute yan as negative 105 minus 75. That is negative 180. And yung forward naman natin is negative 225. So, this is computed as negative 45 minus 180. Or, yung 225 negative can also be computed as negative 405 minus negative 180. Then, lastly, date of settlement, October 30. Ang change natin for the month related to the spot element is negative 165. So, this is computed as negative 270 minus negative 105. So, negative 165 kasi tumaas yung negative. So, ang ating forward element naman is 120 positive. Bakit siya positive? Kasi yan ay na-compute as 75 minus negative 45. So, positive 120. O kaya naman, negative 45 minus negative 165. That is 120. So ngayon, ito ng ating cumulative change at ito ang ating monthly changes. So ang ating cumulative change at monthly change ay ngayon separated na into the spot element and forward element. So we can now prepare our journal entries if the forward element is excluded from being designated as a hedging instrument. So, let's start on date of inception, August 1, 2020. So, ganun din. Since ang ating settlement is net cash settlement, so ang ating journal entry will only pertain to the changes in the exchange rates. And since August 1 is the date of inception, wala pa tayong change in the exchange rates, kaya wala pa tayong journal entry. But then, meron tayong memorandum entry which describes the terms of the forward contract. So ngayon, dun tayo sa August 31. So paano natin i-record ang ating August 31 change? So ito ang ating i-record, itong row na to. So paano natin i-record yan? How do we account for the spot element and the forward element? So sabi natin dito, kapag ang forward element for a forward contract is excluded, meron tayong dalawang option sa treatment ng change related to the forward element. Una is profit or loss siya. Dun siya i-recognize either as a gain or loss o kaya naman ilalagay siya sa OCI. At kapag nilagay siya sa OCI, dito na papasok yung accounting for the cost of hedging. Kasi yung forward element in a forward contract and yung time value of option in an option contract, these are considered as cost of hedging. At pag pinasok na sila sa OCI, doon na natin gagamitin yung accounting for cost of hedging at kailangan nating i-identify if yun ba ay transaction related or time period related. Which is, hindi natin gagawin dito. Ang i-apply natin for the sake of this illustration is yung option 1 for simplicity. Kasi again, etong part na to, kapag ito ay sinara natin sa OCI, ito ay very tedious at medyo masyado ng technical. So, dito tayo sa mas simple na treatment. Yung changes in the forward element will be recognized in profit or loss. At yung included, yung ating included which is the spot element, since tayo ay nakasa cash flow hedge, i-record natin yun sa OCI. Again, ang term na gamit ng standard for the OCI related to the hedging instrument is the cash flow hedge reserve. Etong OCI na to na tinutukoy dito for the cost of hedging is not part of the cash flow hedge reserve. Pareha silang nasa OCI pero magkaiba sila ng classification. Ito, yung ginagamit for hedging instrument, ito naman is not related to the hedging instrument kasi nga excluded siya sa hedging instrument. Again, ang gagawin natin sa ating illustrative problem is yung change sa forward element since excluded will be recognized in profit or loss, the first option. Kaya, ang journal entry natin will be debit forward contract asset, ito yon yung 255 pesos, debit. Then, tayo ay mag-credit ng gain or loss on a forward contract, OCI, na 75 pesos. So, gain to, ito yon yung 75 pesos. So, siya ay credit natin sa OCI. At ito yung OCI na cash flow hedge reserve. At bakit yung buong 75 pesos ay credit natin sa OCI? Kasi, katulad nga na sinabi ko kanina, all changes in the hedging instrument, which in this case, yung spot element, ang ating hedging instrument, is considered effective. Wala tayong i-allocate as ineffective kasi nga mahirap na yung discussion kapag hiniwalay pa natin yung ineffective na part. So let's just assume na walang ineffective na part at lahat ay effective. At ang lahat ng effective na part ay nilalagay sa OCI, the cash flow hedge reserve. At ito yun, 75 pesos. But yung amount related to the forward element, since siya ay excluded, ang sabi ko yung option 1 ang ating gagamitin. So itong 180 will be recorded in the profit or loss. So ang entrada natin ay other income or loss, 180 pesos. So since this is a credit balance, ito ay income. Income yan kasi ito ay positive. Ngayon, punta tayo sa next date. So, on September 30, 2020, sabi niya, nagkaroon tayo ng decrease in the spot element. So, loss to. At decrease din in the forward element na 225. So, loss din to. Pero for the 180, this will be in other comprehensive loss. Ito naman, P&L. So, ang ating journal entry would be debit gain or loss on a forward contract, OCI. That is 180. Again, only the amount allocated to the spot element is recorded in the cash flow reserve OCI. So 180 loss. Then for the 225, since this is related to the forward element that is excluded in the hedging instrument, ito ay sa P&L. Applying option 1, syempre. So kaya debit tayo ng other income or loss na 225. And ano ang ating i-credit? So ang ating i-credit is credit forward contract asset, magkano? 255. Bakit credit natin ang forward contract asset na 255? Kasi tayo ay magka-credit dapat ng forward contract liability na 150. At bakit? Kasi based dito, as of September 30, hindi na tayo forward contract asset. Ang derivative natin is no longer an asset. Instead, it is now a liability. Kaya, kailangan mong i-close yung forward contract asset para ma-recognize yung liability na 150. So, from 255 na asset, dapat maging 150 na liability. So, ngayon, October 30, 2020, ano ang ating journal entry for this date? So, ganun pa din. I-recognize natin yung loss na 165 related to the spot element at yung 120 related to the forward element. So, unahin natin yung related sa spot element. Sabi, mag-recognize daw tayo ng loss na 165. So, tayo ay debit ng loss, OCI, 165. At for the forward element naman ay 120 pero positive to. So, gain to. Kaya tayo ay credit other income na 120 pesos related to the forward element. Tapos, syempre, tayo ay mag-credit ng forward contract liability for 45 pesos. Bakit forward contract liability? Kasi tumaas by 45 pesos ang ating derivative na liability. From 150 naging 195 pesos. So ngayon, after this adjustment, ang ating forward contract liability has now a balance of 195 pesos negative. At katulad nga ng discussion natin kanina dito sa hedging instrument na dinesignate natin in full, tayo ay magsesettle. At panong settlement, tayo ay magbabayad ng 195 pesos. So, ganun din dito. So, para isettle, so debit tayo ng forward contract liability, 195 pesos, and credit cash, which is in Philippine peso, for also 195 pesos. So, ngayon, naisara na ang ating forward contract liability na account after the settlement. Pero, meron pa rin tayong real account, which is the other comprehensive income, na meron ngayong balanse na 270 pesos at siya ay loss. Kung ititingnan nyo, meron tayo ritong credit na 75 sa OCI, debit na 180 at debit na 165. Pag kinuha natin ang net effect niyan, yan ay may net balance na 270 pesos na loss. Tatandaan nyo na yung cumulative balance, yun yung lumalabas sa statement of financial position. And since yung spot element lang ang sinasara natin sa OCI, ibig sabihin, itong cumulative change sa spot element, ito dapat ang balanse ng ating cash flow hedge reserve na makikita sa statement of financial position. Hindi katulad kanina, dito, once na ang hedging instrument ay dinesignate in full, ang nakikita natin sa OCI na account sa statement of financial position is nakabase dito sa total value ng derivative. Ito yung balanse ng ating OCI. Kasi hindi na natin in-split kanina yung spot from forward element. Pero dito, since ang forward element ay hindi kasama, so ito lang ang magiging balanse ng ating OCI. So, ito ay 180 plus 165 minus 75, yan ay 270 pesos debit balance, which is a loss. Which is, again, kailangan natin i-reclassify from OCI to profit or loss. At paano? Ganun din kung paano natin ginawa kanina rito once yung ating hedging instrument is designated in full. So ngayon, let's prepare the journal entry to reclassify the OCI to the P&L. And again, yung ating OCI dito na ililipat sa P&L is yung effective portion lang ng spot element. And sabi ko nga kanina, for simplicity, ito ay kinonsider natin lahat as effective. So walang ineffective na part, kaya lahat na ito ay pinasok natin sa OCI. So ngayon, unahin natin yung unang option. That is to adjust the balance of the OCI account into the initial cost of the non-financial asset, which in our case is the office equipment. So, ang entrada natin is debit office equipment for 270 pesos, which is the cumulative balance related to the spot element. Then, credit gain or loss on forward contract OCI, 270 pesos. So, ngayon, kung si holder, dinesignate niya is only the spot element as the hedging instrument, ang equipment natin ngayon is now at 97,755 plus 270 pesos. So, ang office equipment natin ngayon is now at 98,025. At ano yung 98,025? So, iyon yung ating expected inflow as computed at the date of inception, 98,025. So, kung magde-depreciate tayo ngayon ng ating office equipment, dun na lilitaw yung effect ng reclassification natin from OCI to P&L. So, magiging adjusted na yung depreciation expense na makakompute natin once yung initial cost ng ating non-financial asset is adjusted for the balance of the OCI account. So, ano ang ating journal entry for the depreciation at magiging magkano siya? So, ang entrada natin is debit depreciation expense for 3,267.50 and credit accumulated depreciation 3,267.50. So, dito ko na lang siya nilagay pero iniba ko yung kulay. Pinares ko yung color dito sa ating column na to para ma-identify natin na itong depreciation expense na to is computed based on the adjusted cost of the office equipment if the forward element is excluded in the hedging instrument. So, paano na-compute ang 3,267.50? That is 98,025, which is 97,755 plus 270 divided by 5 years times 2 months divided by 12 months. So that is 3,267.50. So ngayon, what if kung hindi natin inadjust ang initial cost for the balance of the cash flow hedge reserve? So ang pinili natin is yung second option, and that is magre-reclassify tayo from OCI to P&L only if yung hedge item affects the profit or loss. And dito sa ating problem, paano ang ating office equipment magkakaroon ng epekto sa income statement? Siyempre, during the time na nagre-record tayo ng depreciation expense for the office equipment. So, dito, nag-record tayo ng depreciation expense 3258.50. Ito ay as is. Hindi natin babaguhin. Ibig sabihin, gagawin uli ito. Bakit? Kasi ito ay nakabase doon sa original cost ng ating office equipment, which applies, syempre, regardless whether the hedging instrument is designated in its entirety o kaya hindi. The forward element is excluded. So, ito as is to, either designation. So, ngayon, after nito, dahil nagkaroon ng effect ang ating office equipment sa P&L by recording depreciation expense, so this is now the time for us to reclassify the OCI to P&L based on the same computation for the depreciation. So, syempre, ang entrada natin, since ang balanse ng ating cash flow hedge reserve or gain or loss on forward contract is a debit balance na 270 pesos. So, debit balance siya. Pag ni-reclassify natin siya into P&L, syempre, i-credit natin siya. So, credit gain or loss on forward contract OCI for 9 pesos. And paano na-compute ang 9 pesos? That is 270 yung balanse ng ating OCI divided by 5 years times 2 months divided by 12 months. So, that is 9 pesos. And ano ang ating ide-debit? Siyempre, ang ide-debit natin is a P&L account kasi dapat ma-reclassify siya sa P&L. At anong P&L account? Depreciation expense, 9 pesos. So, by recording this additional entry, hindi na 3258.50 ang ating depreciation expense. Magiging magkano siya? Madadagdagan siya ng 9 pesos. So, 3258 plus 9 pesos, ang total na depreciation expense natin is 3267.50, which is also the same depreciation if we choose to adjust the initial cost of the office equipment. So, ganun din, di ba? 3267.50. So, either option, i-adjust man yung initial cost o hindi, ang depreciation expense would be the same. Yun nga lang, saan ka mas mapapadali? Mas madali yung unang option, yung adjustment to the initial cost. Kasi isa lang ang trabaho mo, i-adjust mo lang ang initial cost. Then, magko-compute ka na lang ng depreciation on a normal basis. Pero dito, pag ang pinili mo is yung letter B, mapapagod ka. Kasi kailangan mong gawin yung reclassification from OCI to P&L until the end of the life of the office equipment. So, ito ang ating discussion for a forecasted transaction to purchase an office equipment, which is a fixed asset. And ang didiscuss natin for the hedging instrument is kung ang ating hedging instrument is designated in its entirety o kaya naman kung ang hedging instrument is only designated for the spot element and yung related sa forward element is excluded in the hedging instrument. Tapos, ang ginamit pa natin dito is yung related sa forward element ay kino-close lang natin sa P&L. So, ngayon, let us now proceed to our next problem. So, dito, this is again a cash flow hedge of a forecasted transaction to purchase. So, similar to the first problem. So, ano ang difference nito dun sa ating unang sinagutan? So, basahin natin yung problem. So, on July 1, 2020, Office Stockroom Incorporated enters into a forward exchange contract to receive $5,000 and deliver 251,500 pesos after 90 days with no initial cost. So, ibig sabihin daw, on July 1, 2020, nag-acquire ang entity ng isang forward contract. At ano itong forward contract na to? Is this a forward contract to purchase or sell? So, sabi niya, to receive 5,000 US dollars and deliver 251,500 pesos. So, ibig sabihin, tayo ay bibili. At ano ang bibili natin? 5,000 US dollars. At ang ating ibabayad is 251,500 pesos. So, yung ating i-deliver, this is the outflow, which is already fixed at 251,500 and is payable after 90 days. Pero at date of inception, sabi, there is no initial cost. So, ibig sabihin, wala tayong binayarang premium at date of inception. Then, at inception, Office Stockroom Incorporated designates the forward exchange contract as a hedging instrument in a cash flow hedge of a highly probable forecasted transaction to purchase 5 office equipment to be held for sale for a total of 5,000 US dollars on September 29, 2020. The entity prepares monthly financial statements and it is assumed that all conditions for hedge accounting are met. The forward contract is to be settled with actual delivery. So, ang sabi, yung forward contract daw na in-acquire natin on July 1, 2020 has been designated daw as a hedging instrument. So, ano yung kanyang hedge item? So, ang hedge item is a highly probable forecasted transaction to purchase. At ano ang bibilhin? 5 office equipment daw that is held for sale. So, which means, etong mga equipment na to, these are inventory kasi they are held for sale. At magkano itong mga equipment na to? So, sila daw ay at 5,000 US dollar, which is a foreign currency. So, which means, ang ating forecasted transaction is a foreign currency transaction. And again, this can only be designated as hedge item if the forecasted transaction is highly probable. Dapat malaki ang chance na mangyayari itong transaction na to before we can designate this as the hedge item. And sabi, we prepare monthly financial statements. And the forward contract is to be settled with actual delivery. Ibig sabihin, hindi siya isa-settle similar to our first problem. So, siya ay isa-settle with actual delivery. So, which means na makaka-receive talaga tayo ng 5,000 US dollar after 90 days. And that is on September 29, 2020. And sabi dito, on November 5, 2020, the entity sold 3 of this equipment for 204,000 in Philippine peso. So, binenta na natin yung inventaryo at ang benta natin is in Philippine peso. So, hindi siya foreign currency. So, ngayon, let us now proceed to our Excel file. So, ngayon, nandito na tayo sa ating Excel file. So, ganun uli, bago tayo mag-prepare ng journal entries, gawin muna natin yung ating schedule. And again, ang ating gagawing schedule is only for the hedging instrument. Kasi sa hedging instrument lang tayo magkakaroon ng monitoring ng fluctuation ng exchange rates. Kasi since ang ating hedge item is a forecasted transaction, ibig sabihin wala tayong journal entry during the term of the forward contract. So, ibig sabihin, simula July 1, 2020 until September 29, 2020, wala tayong journal entries related to the forecasted transaction. So, ang tanging meron lang tayong journal entry is for the hedging instrument, the forward contract. So, let's start. So, ang umpisa natin syempre is the date of inception, which is July 1, 2020. And syempre, ang i-compute natin dito is yung ating expected inflow. So, bakit yung expected inflow at settlement date ang kukumpute natin dito for the forward contract? Kasi, ang ating outflow is already fixed at 251,500 pesos. So, naka-fix na yung ating outflow. Pero, yung ating inflow is hindi naka-fix. Magfa-fluctuate ang ating inflow. Pero syempre, yung 5,000 US dollar, ito ay naka-fix. Pero, dollar yung naka-fix. And since ang ating functional currency is assumed to be Philippine peso, we need to record the inflow in Philippine peso. And ang Philippine peso value nitong inflow na to, yun ang subject to fluctuation. And again, the outflow is already fixed at 251,500. Kaya ang ating monitoring dito sa ating schedule is the expected inflow at settlement date for this forward contract. So let's start with a notional amount at ito ay 5,000 US dollars. And this time, so sabay na natin kukumputin yung total value ng ating derivative at yung separation ng spot element and forward element. So game. So unahin natin kumputin yung total value ng ating derivative, and that is by multiplying the notional amount by the forward rate on this date, July 1, 2020. So ang ating forward rate on this date is 50.30. So ano yung 50.30? So etong 50.30 daw na to is the expected spot rate 90 days after July 1, 2020, which is the current date. At ano yung 90 days after July 1, 2020? That is September 29, 2020, the settlement date. Tapos, ngayon, i-identify na rin natin sabay yung spot rate kasi kukumpitin din naman natin yung spot element. So, ano ang spot rate natin on this date? So, that is 50.35. So, ngayon, i-multiply na natin ito sa ating notional amount. Unahin natin yung forward rate. So, 50.30 multiplied by 5,000. So, ito ay ating inflow based on forward rate. So, that is 251,500. And for the purpose of spot element computation, so i-multiply na rin natin yung spot rate sa ating notional amount. So yan ay inflow din. Expected inflow based on spot rate. So that is 251,750. Then, after natin makompute yan, syempre, ang susunod nating kukomputin is yung changes. And syempre, alam naman natin na dalawa yung changes na kinocompute natin. Isang cumulative at isang for the month. So, unahin muna natin yung cumulative kasi we need to compute for the cumulative change related doon sa total value ng forward, related sa spot element at forward element. So, medyo madami. So, bali tatlo siya. So, unahin natin yung cumulative change. Then, mamaya na lang yung for the month. So, ang cumulative change natin, syempre, that will be for the total value of the forward. So, yun yung value talaga ng derivative, which is equal to the fair value of the spot element and the forward element. So, on this date, the date of inception, syempre, wala pa tayong cumulative change. Kasi nga, date of inception pa lang to, di ba? Kung may change, ibig sabihin, change in the exchange rates. So, hindi pa nagfa-fluctuate ang exchange rates kasi dito pa nga lang tayong mag-uumpisa. At saka, wala rin tayong value dito na i-assign sa derivative kasi wala tayong binayarang any premium kasi nga with no initial cost. Kaya, pwede na tayong mag-proceed sa next date. At yun yung July 31, 2020. So, ang procedure natin would be the same. So, let's start again with a notional amount of 5,000 US dollar. At ganun pa din, kukumputin natin yung expected inflow natin na naka-base sa forward rate at spot rate. So, identify muna natin yung forward rate to be used. So, on this date, the current date is July 31, 2020. So, ang ating forward rate is 50.29. So, sana pulot yung 50.29. So, ito daw yun. So, ano ibig sabihin nito? So, it means that yung 50.29 is our expected spot rate. Kailan natin ina-expect na ito ang magiging spot rate? 60 days after July 31, 2020. At ano yung 60 days after July 31, 2020? That is the settlement date, September 29, 2020. Then, let's identify the spot rate. So, ang spot rate is 50.42. Ngayon, i-multiply na natin itong mga rates na to sa ating notional amount. So, for the inflow based on forward rate, so that is 251,450. And yung nakabase naman sa spot rate, that is 252,100. So, ngayon, dito na tayo sa changes. Cumulative. Meron ba tayong change? Obviously, meron tayong change in the exchange rate. So, paano natin kukumputin? Unahin natin yung derivative. So, yung derivative, which is the value of the forward contract, this is based on the on the change on the forward rate. So, dito tayo magbe-base sa expected inflow natin based on forward rate. So, anong nangyari? From 251,500 na inflow on July 1, 2020, naging 251,450 on July 31, 2020, which is obviously nag-decrease, di ba? So, ibig sabihin, kung nag-decrease siya, meron tayong negative 50 pesos kasi yun yung decrease niya from July 1 to July 31. And, eto ngayon yung total fair value ng ating derivative on July 31, 2020. Naka-liability siya kasi negative siya. At eto yung hahatiin natin into spot element and forward element. So, para ma-identify kung magkano sa 50 pesos na liability pertains to the spot element and forward element, so, ang uunahin natin kumpitin syempre is the spot element. Kasi itong forward element is just the difference between the total value and the spot element. So, unahin natin yung spot element by identifying the change on the spot rate. So, ito ang magiging basis natin. So, from 251,750, naging 252,100. So, this time, yung sa spot rate, nag-increase. So, kung nag-increase siya, ibig sabihin, ito ay positive na 350 pesos. Tapos ngayon, doon na tayo sa forward element. So again, this is just the difference between derivative, the total value, and the fair value of the spot element. So, negative 50 minus positive 350. That is 400 negative. So, ito ang ating forward element. So, ibig sabihin, 350 positive minus 400. So, syempre, negative 50 pesos. Pero syempre, dito sa tatlo na figures na to, ang lumilitaw sa statement of financial position as the derivative, syempre, ito yung total. Yung total ng spot and forward element. So, ngayon, punta na tayo sa next date. So, next date is August 30, 2020. So, ganun din. So, same procedure. Let's start with a notional amount of 5,000 US dollar. Then, let us identify the forward rate and the spot rate. So, the forward rate on this date will be 50.33. So, ito yon. Bakit 50.33? Kasi daw, ito yung ina-expect nating magiging spot rate 30 days after August 30, 2020. At kailan yun? September 29, 2020. That is the settlement date. Then, the spot rate is 50.50 pesos. So, ngayon, i-multiply na natin itong dalawang rates na to sa ating notional amount. So, yung inflow down natin based on forward rate is 251,650 at yung naka-base naman sa spot rate is 252,500. So, ngayon, let us go to the change, cumulative change. Dito tayo sa derivative. So, kung cumulative, syempre, ang start natin is July 1, the inception date. And since derivative muna, dito tayo, yung nakabase sa forward rate. So, from 251,500 daw na inflow, naging 251,650 na inflow. So, obviously, tumaas. Magkano itinaas? That is 150 positive. So, positive na siya kasi tumaas na siya. Then, for the spot element, so ganun din, cumulative change. So, let's start on July 1, 2020. So, from 251,750 naging 252,500. So, obviously, tumaas uli siya at magkano ang itinaas? That is 750 pesos. Then, for the forward element, so ganun pa din, difference ng dalawa. So, 150 minus 750, that is 600 pesos negative. So, 750 minus 600, that is 150. And again, ito ang lumilitaw na derivative sa statement of financial position. Then, lastly, punta tayo sa last date. The date of settlement, September 29, 2020. So, ngayon, since ito na yung settlement date, hindi na tayo gagamit ng forward rate. Kasi ito na yung actual date of settlement. So, ito na kasi yung settlement date. So, hindi na tayo gagamit ng forward rate. Ang gagamitin na natin this time is the spot rate. So, ngayon, kumpitin na natin. So, let's start with a notional amount of 5,000 US dollar at ang spot rate natin on this date is 50.55. At syempre, ang makukumpita natin dito is the inflow based on spot rate. And pag itong 50.55 is minultiply sa notional amount of 5,000 US dollar, ang ating ngayong actual inflow based on the spot rate is now at 252,750 pesos. Ngayon, eto na rin ang basis natin to compute for the cumulative change of derivative instrument. Actually, at date of settlement, eto na yung basis natin both for the derivative and the spot element. So, unahin muna natin si derivative. So, ano ang cumulative change ng ating derivative since July 1, 2020? So, starting 251,500, naging 252,750 on this date, September 29, 2020. So, magkano ang change? So, obviously, tumaas. At magkano ang itinaas? That is 1,250 pesos. Yung difference ng 251,500 at 252,750. Then, for the spot element, ganun pa din, starting July 1, 2020, 251,750 at naging 252,750 at date of settlement. At magkano ang change? Obviously, tumaas din at yan ay 1,000 pesos. And for the forward element, so this is simply the difference between the total value of the derivative and the fair value of the spot element. So, 1,250 minus 1,000, that is 250 pesos positive. So, ngayon, ang gawin naman natin, since tapos na tayo sa cumulative change, dito naman tayo sa change for the month na ito yung i-record natin na either gain or loss. So, let's start at the date of inception, July 1, 2020. At syempre, yung ating change, kung may tatlo tayo ritong kinompute sa cumulative change, so ganun din dito for the month. Meron din tayong tatlo. Syempre, yung change for the month related to the derivative. Ito yon, yung total value ng derivative, then the spot element and the forward element. So ngayon, syempre, dito sa date na to, July 1, 2020, wala tayong i-recognize na change for the month kasi nga, kakastart pa lang nito. Ito ay date of inception. Kaya, doon na tayo ngayon sa July 31, 2020, yung next date. Kasi dito na nagkaroon ng change. So, magkano ang change natin dito sa July 31, 2020? So, unahin natin yung total value ng derivative. So, ito daw ay negative 50. So, paano na-compute ang negative 50? So, siya ay na-compute as, syempre, negative 50 minus 0 kasi wala siyang value ng July 1. Then, for the spot element, syempre, 350 kasi 350 minus 0. Then, for the forward element, pwedeng negative 50 minus 350. Kaya ito ay 400. Negative. O kaya naman, syempre, negative 400 minus 0. Then, for August 30, 2020, ang change natin for the month of August related to the total value of the derivative is 200 pesos positive. So, bakit siya 200 pesos positive? Kasi 150 minus negative 50 pesos. Kaya ang sagot is 200 pesos positive. Then, for the spot element, 750 minus 350, that is 400. Then, for the forward element, tayo ay negative 600 minus negative 400, that is negative 200. O kaya naman, 200 minus 400, that is negative 200. Then, at the date of settlement, July 29, 2020, ang change natin for the month of September, that is 1,250 minus 150, that is 1,100. Then for the spot element, 1,000 pesos minus 750, that is 250 positive. And for the forward element, 250 minus negative 600, that is positive 850. O kaya, 1,100 minus 250. So, 850 pesos. So, ngayon, our schedule is now complete. So, we can now prepare the journal entries. So, ngayon, let us now proceed to our journal entry. So, umpisahan natin doon sa ating hedge item. So, for the hedge item, ang sabi natin, ang ating hedge item is a forecasted transaction to purchase. At during the term of the forward contract, from July 1, 2020 until before September 29, 2020, the settlement date of the forward contract, wala tayong journal entry related to the hedge item. Kaya on July 1, 2020, wala tayong entrada. Ganun din sa July 31, 2020 at ganun din sa August 30, 2020, wala ring entrada. Pero meron na tayong entry dito sa September 29, 2020. At ano ito? So, ang entry na natin dito is the actual purchase of the 5 office equipment that are held for sale. Magkano daw? 5,000 US dollar. Pero syempre, since ang ating functional currency is assumed to be in Philippine peso, so kahit ito ay binili in US dollar, we still need to record all transactions using Philippine peso as the currency. So kaya to record the purchase of inventory, again take note itong mga equipment na to ay inventory kasi sila ay held for sale, hindi sila gagamitin. So kaya tayo ay debit inventory. Magkano? Syempre 5,000 US dollar multiplied by forward rate or spot rate. Syempre, spot rate. Bakit spot rate? Kasi actual purchase transaction na to. At ang spot rate on this date is 50.55. So, yun ay 252,750 pesos. At credit tayo ng cash. Anong cash? Syempre, ano ba ang ipambabayad natin? Syempre, yan ay US dollar. Kaya, credit cash, US dollar. Pero, it should be recorded in Philippine peso. So again, that is 252,750. Take note, ang ating ibabayad ay pera. At anong klaseng pera? US dollar. Hindi tayo magbabayad ng Philippine peso. Pero syempre, it should be recorded in Philippine peso by conversion using the spot rate. So ngayon, punta tayo ngayon sa hedging instrument. At ganun uli, katulad ng ginawa natin sa first problem, gawin natin yung journal entry based on 2 cases. Ang unang case is kung yung hedging instrument or yung forward contract will be designated in its entirety. So, yung buong change in the value of the forward contract will be used as the hedging instrument. So, there is no need to separate the spot element from the forward element. So, gawin natin ang ating journal entry. Pero, ang sabi, paano ba natin gagawin ang journal entry? Is it net or gross? So, tingnan natin. So, sabi rito, the forward contract is to be settled with actual delivery. So, ibig sabihin, makaka-receive talaga tayo ng 5,000 US dollar at settlement date. So, ang ating journal entry hindi net. Gagamitin natin is yung gross. Mas maiging gamitin natin yung gross. Actually, pwede nga yung net eh. Pero para mas madali, dun tayo sa gross. So, to record, tayo ay debit ng USD receivable. Magkano? Syempre, tingin dito. So, syempre, ang basis natin is yung inflow based on forward rate. So, yan ay 251,500. So, debit 251,500. Then, credit tayo ng peso payable. And sabi rito, fix yan at 251,500 pesos. So, yung peso payable, again, this is our fixed outflow at settlement date. So, ang hindi fixed is yung Philippine peso value nung 5,000 US dollar that will be receivable on September 29, 2020. Kaya itong account title na to, yung USD receivable, ito yung subject to fluctuations. So ngayon, let us now proceed to the next date. So July 31, 2020. So since ang ating forward contract is designated in its entirety as the hedging instrument, kaya ang titingnan natin to record the gain or loss is yung total. Syempre, ito ang titingnan. Ignore na tong spot element and forward element kasi nga entirety. So hindi natin titingnan tong dalawang column na to. Ito lang ang tingin. Sabi dito, July 31, we need to recognize a loss of 50 pesos. So, kung loss to na 50 pesos, syempre, debit yan. At ang gagamitin natin this time na account title is Cash Flow Hedge Reserve. At naka-debit siya, so siya ay 50 pesos. Tapos nilagay ko rito effective para hindi kayo laging malilito. Kasi dapat talaga lahat ng nire-record sa OCI na related sa ating hedging instrument should be the effective portion. Kasi nga, ang sabi natin, para dun sa ineffective, dun yun sa profit or loss. Pero, kagaya nga ng sinabi ko kanina sa first problem, we are going to assume that all these changes are assumed to be effective. Wala tayong i-allocate na ineffective. So let's just assume na lahat ng ito ay effective. Kasi to separate yung effective at ineffective, that will be a very long discussion. Tapos meron tayong mga additional terms na kailangan ma-encounter to fully understand the identification of the effective and ineffective part of the change in the value of the derivative. Kaya ganito na lang muna ang assumption natin. Everything is effective. Kaya lahat nakarecord sa OCI. At again, bakit tayo naka-OCI kapag cash flow hedge? Kasi hindi tayo pwedeng mag-P&L. Hindi tayo pwedeng mag-record ng nominal account na pinapresent sa profit or loss. Bakit? Kasi walang corresponding entry sa hedge item that affects profit or loss. Kasi nga, di ba, ang purpose natin dito is to hedge. At sabi, para magkaroon ng hedging, dapat may nangyayaring offsetting. At ang offsetting usually nangyayari sa profit or loss. At para magkaroon ng offsetting sa profit or loss, dapat meron kang na-record na account sa hedge item na affected ang profit or loss at ganun din for the hedging instrument. Magre-record ka ng account affecting profit or loss para yung profit or loss na na-record for the hedging instrument, yun yung mag-o-offset doon sa account na related sa hedge item that affects the profit or loss. So, para may offset siya. Yung P&L dito, ma-offset yun ng P&L dito sa hedging instrument. Pero since dito nga sa ating problem, wala tayong entrada sa hedge item. So, for the meantime, hindi tayo gagamit ng P&L na account. I-defer natin yung offsetting. At para i-defer, nire-record muna natin sa OCI. At ang account title ngayon na ginamit natin is Cash Flow Hedge Reserve. So, offsetting account to. Pag may debit balance siya, loss siya. Kapag may credit balance siya, siya ay gain. Tapos, kaya tayo may loss na 50 kasi ang derivative natin is a liability of 50 pesos. Kasi bumaba yung Philippine peso value ng ating USD receivable. Kaya tayo ay credit USD receivable for 50 pesos. So, ngayon, dun tayo sa August 30. So, sa August 30, sabi dito, meron daw positive 200 na change for the month of August related to the total value of the derivative. So, gain to. Kaya tayo ay mag-credit ng cash flow hedge reserve 200 pesos. And again, this is assumed to be effective. Bakit tayo nag-credit ng gain? Kasi tumaas ang Philippine peso value para sa ating USD receivable. Kaya tayo ay debit USD receivable 200 pesos. Siyempre, yung mga changes na to, dito yan sa inflow based on forward rate. Then, punta tayo sa settlement date, September 29. Siyempre, before we settle the obligation, i-update muna natin uli. Based dito sa change na to. So, this time, meron tayong positive 1,100 and this is again a gain. So, tayo ay mag-record ng gain. So, credit cash flow hedge reserve 1,100 at baka tayo nagkaroon ng gain kasi tumaas ang ating inflow. Naging 252,750. So, kaya debit USD receivable 1,100 pesos. So, ngayon, ang ating USD receivable has now a balance of 252,750. Pero ang ating peso payable is still fixed at 251,500. So, pwede na tayo mag-settle. So, ang tanong, is this favorable or unfavorable to the entity? Obviously, mas malaki ang Philippine peso value ng ating USD receivable compared sa peso payable. Bakit ko nasabi? Kasi ang ating derivative is positive, 1,250. So, ibig sabihin, asset to. So, kung asset to, ibig sabihin, mas malaki yung inflow na marireceive natin kaysa sa outflow na ilalabas natin. At ang difference nilang dalawa ng inflow at outflow is 1,250. So, ngayon, tayo na ay mag-settle. So, unahin natin yung inflow. So, makakakolekta tayo. Ano yung kokolekt natin? Yung 5,000 US dollar. So, may actual delivery. So, marireceive talaga natin yung 5,000 US dollar. So, kaya tayo ay magde-debit ng cash USD. Again, that is 5,000 US dollar. Pero, i-record to in Philippine peso. So, magkano mo i-record? Siyempre, at spot rate. At magkano siya? 252,750. And credit tayo ng USD receivable at 252,750. So, ngayon, magbabayad na tayo. Siyempre, para magbayad, credit tayo ng cash. At anong cash? Siyempre, Philippine peso. Kasi ang sabi niya rito, 251,500. Kaya, yun ang i-credit nating amount. So, again, ang binayad natin ay Philippine peso, hindi dollar. Tapos, i-debit na ngayon natin yung ating peso payable na fix. That is also at 251,500. So, ngayon, ito ng ating journal entry for the hedging instrument kung yung forward contract is designated as hedging instrument in full in its entirety. So, kung titingnan nyo rito, in effect, kung ano daw yung natanggap natin ditong cash in US dollar, yun yung pinangbayad natin dito upon purchase ng ating office equipment na held for sale, yung inventaryo. So, after nitong entrada na to ng settlement, sarado na yung USD receivable at sarado na rin yung peso payable natin na account. Ang natitira na lang na account title is the cash flow hedge reserve. At ang sabi natin, hindi pa nangyayari ang offsetting kapag nakarecord pa siya sa OCI. Kasi mangyayari lang ang offsetting kapag ito ay ni-reclassify na sa profit or loss. So, ibig sabihin, itong cash flow hedge reserve should be reclassified to profit or loss. And again, kailan natin i-reclassify ang OCI na to papunta sa profit or loss para magkaroon ng offsetting? So, gagawin natin yon kapag nagkaroon na ng effect sa profit or loss ang ating hedge item. So, dito, as of September 29, 2020, sa ating hedge item, based dito sa entry na to, hindi pa to nakaka-apekto sa profit or loss. Since inventory to, makaka-apekto lang to sa profit or loss kung ito na ay mabenta. So, dun lang siya magkakaroon ng effect sa profit or loss. So, ibig sabihin, mag-aantay pa tayo kung kailan siya mabenta. At dun natin i-reclassify etong OCI papunta sa profit or loss. Pero again, sabi natin, binigyan tayo ng standard ng 2 options. Kasi itong binili natin na inventaryo is a non-financial asset. Dahil dito, binigyan tayo ng 2 options kung paano natin i-reclassify ang ating OCI papunta sa profit or loss. At ano-ano yun? So, ito yung una natin. Adjust daw the initial cost of the non-financial asset. So, kailangan natin i-adjust yung initial cost ng ating financial asset na inventory. At yung second option natin is to transfer yung OCI papunta sa P&L kung yung ating inventory affects the P&L. At yun ay kung mabenta na yung ating inventaryo. Actually, dito sa dalawa na to, etong second option lang, yung actually yung direct reclassification ng OCI papuntang P&L. Ito kasing first option natin, hindi naman talaga kasi siya reclassification to profit or loss ang nangyari. Ang nangyari kasi 'di ba is inadjust natin yung initial cost nung inventory, which is dun sa first problem natin, ang inadjust natin yung cost ng ating equipment. Pero dito sa problem naman natin, i-adjust natin siya sa cost ng inventory. Pero indirectly kasi magkakaroon siya ng effect sa profit or loss. Kasi yung marirecord nating cost of sales sa profit or loss is already adjusted. So, in effect, nagkaroon na ng offsetting sa profit or loss kasi dun pa lang sa initial cost, adjusted na siya ng ating OCI. So, gawin natin. So, ngayon, unahin muna natin yung first option which is yung adjustment sa initial cost. So, syempre, mangyayari yon right after ng ating settlement. Pwede natin gawin yon on the date of settlement which is September 29, 2020. Hindi natin kailangang antayin na magkaroon ng effect yung hedge item sa profit or loss. So, ibig sabihin, pwede na nating i-adjust ng buo yung ating cash flow hedge reserve, OCI, sa initial cost ng ating inventory. So, buo siyang i-adjust. Para kapag nagkaroon na ng effect yung ating inventaryo sa profit or loss, adjusted na yung lalabas sa profit or loss. Ibig sabihin, dun na magte-take effect yung offsetting kapag nagkaroon na ng effect yung hedge item sa profit or loss. So, gawin natin. So, on this date, sabi natin, ang ating cash flow hedge reserve has a balance of 1,250 pesos. And that is a credit balance. So, siya daw ay gain. Actually, under cash flow hedge, at kung ang hedging instrument is designated in its entirety, kung ano yung value ng ating derivative, which in this case is 1,250, ibig sabihin, yan din ang value ng OCI natin as of this date na makikita sa Statement of Financial Position. Pareha sila kung ang hedging instrument is designated in its entirety. So, ibig sabihin, ito rin ang balance ng ating OCI. And that is a credit balance, which is a gain. Or, kung di kayo sure, pwede nyo namang computin. So, ito ay debit na 50, credit na 200, at credit na 1,100. So, tayo ay may 1,250 na credit balance sa cash flow hedge reserve. At yon ang ating ipang-adya sa ating inventory. So, simulan natin. Ang entrada natin is debit tayo ng cash flow hedge reserve kasi nga siya ay may credit balance. So, para i-close siya, so dapat debit at 1,250 pesos. At credit, inventory, 1,250. So, after nyan, ang inventaryo natin ay hindi na 252,750. So, magkano na siya? 252,750 minus 1,250, that is 251,500. At ano yung 251,500? Siyempre, yun yung ating fixed price. Nakalock in na yung inventory natin. Ibig sabihin, doon sa presyo na to, 251,500. So, bakit 251,500? Kasi kung titingnan nyo, nag-credit tayo dito ng cash, USD, 252,750, na siyang parang in effect na dinebit natin dito. Also at 252,750. So, ang natitirang cash dito is ito, yung credit cash na 251,500, which is yung fixed price sa ating forward contract. So, dito na nakalock in sa presyo to yung ating inventaryo. So, kaya ang ating inventory is 251,500. So, paano ngayon magkakaroon ng offsetting sa P&L? So, kapag nabenta na yung inventaryo. So, sabi rito, on November 5, 2020, the entity sold 3 of this equipment for 204,000 pesos. So, nabenta siya in Philippine peso, hindi in foreign currency. So, kailan? November 5, 2020. So, gawin natin yung entrada. So, on November 5, 2020, para ma-record yung sale, syempre, debit tayo ng cash, Philippine peso, 204,000 pesos, and credit sales, 204,000 pesos. And using perpetual inventory system, dahil syempre, yung ating purchase account is debited, kasi yung purchase transaction natin is debited using inventory accounts. So, we are using perpetual inventory system, kaya we need to record the cost of sales. At magkano ang cost of sales? So, entradahan muna natin. Tayo ay debit cost of sales for 150,900 pesos. So, paano na-compute? That is 252,750 minus 1,250 times 3 units divided by 5 units. Kasi nga, 5 units yung binili natin dito sa September 29, 2020. So, that is 150,900. And credit, of course, inventory, 150,900. So, etong 150,900 na to, adjusted na to. Ito na yung adjusted cost of sales natin after we have adjusted the OCI into the initial cost of our inventory. So, dahil nakapag-record na tayo ng cost of sales, in effect, nagkaroon na ng offsetting sa profit or loss. Ngayon, punta tayo dun sa second option. And take note, huwag kayong makakonfuse kasi etong journal entries na to, isang libro lang to. Ito yung libro ng entity. Hiniwalay lang natin yung mga journal entries related to the hedge item and related to the hedging instrument para mas ma-identify natin separately kung paano yung treatment for the hedge item and the hedging instrument. But we are only using the same books. Iisang libro lang to. Ito yung libro ng entity, which also applies to all our previous discussions on forward contract. So, kung meron tayong hedge item, tapos merong hedging instrument, iisang libro lang yon. Libro yon ng company. Hinihiwalay lang natin yung entries for the hedge item and the hedging instrument para nga mas maintindihan natin yung difference ng accounting treatment sa dalawa. Pero essentially, iisang libro lang yan. So again, dito ang magiging cost of sales is 150,900 kung ang ating hedging instrument is designated in its entirety. So hindi natin in-split ang spot element from the forward element. Then now, punta tayo dun sa second option, and that is to reclassify the cash flow hedge reserve to the P&L once the hedge item affects the profit or loss. And syempre, for this problem, since ang ating non-financial asset is an inventory, so yung inventory will have an effect on profit or loss once the inventory is sold. So, intradahan natin for the second option. So, mangyari to on November 5, 2020, the date of sale. So, let's record first the sales transaction. Debit cash, 204,000 pesos and credit sales, 204,000 pesos. So, kung titingnan nyo, parehas siya doon sa ating first option. So, wala namang difference pagdating sa sales. Magkakaroon ng difference pagdating sa cost of sales. So, anong entrada natin for the cost of sales? So, ang entrada natin for the cost of sales, since dito sa second option, hindi natin in-adjust ang cost ng inventory. So, ang cost of sales natin would be debit 151,650 and credit inventory 151,650. So, paano na-compute yung 151,650? So, ito yung 3 over 5 nung original cost. 252,750 times 3 over 5. So, ito ang ating cost of sales. Pero syempre, itong cost of sales na to based to sa original cost. At ma-adjust to once na yung cash flow hedge reserve natin, OCI, will be reclassified to profit or loss. At paano natin ngayon i-reclassify? So, isasara natin sa isang nominal account kasi nga i-reclassify siya sa profit or loss. At anong nominal account? That is the cost of sales. And since ang ating cash flow hedge reserve has a credit balance, so para siya i-reclassify papunta sa profit or loss, dapat natin siyang i-debit. Kaya debit tayo cash flow hedge reserve, OCI, pero hindi lahat. Unlike dito sa first option, lahat, di ba? Clinose natin. Dito, hindi lahat. So, yung amount na i-debit natin dito, unlike dito sa first option, hindi siya yung full amount. Hindi tayo magde-debit ng 1,250. So, ang i-debit natin dito is yun lamang related doon sa nabenta. Since ang total units na binili natin is 5 units of equipment, pero ang nabenta is 3 units lamang, so ang ating i-debit is 3 over 5 ng 1,250 and that is 750 pesos. At credit tayo ng nominal account. Bakit nominal account? Kasi nga, i-reclassify na ngayon natin yung OCI to P&L. So, anong nominal account? So, yun ang cost of sales. Also at 750 pesos. So, ngayon, ang cost of sales natin ay nabawasan kasi nag-credit tayo. So, siya ay 151,650 minus 750. Magkano siya? So, yun ay 150,900. So, ganun pa din, either option, i-adjust mo man yung OCI directly sa initial cost ng inventory o kaya naman mag-antay tayo na yung hedge item magkaroon ng effect sa P&L. Regardless, ang cost of sales ay parehas. Dito, 150,900. Yun nga lang, isang entradahan dito sa first option. Pero dito sa second option, dalawang entries tayo. Isa based sa original cost and yung isa is yung reclassification ng OCI to P&L. So, ito ang ating journal entry for the hedging instrument if the forward contract is designated in its entirety to be the hedging instrument. Paano naman kung hindi? Ibig sabihin, paano kung yung forward element is excluded in the hedging instrument and only the spot element is designated as the hedging instrument? So, gawin natin. So, ngayon, let us now prepare the journal entries. If ang ating forward contract, the derivative instrument, will be designated as a hedging instrument but yung forward element is excluded. So, kapag in-exclude natin siya, ibig sabihin, yung changes doon sa forward element, hindi natin siya i-record sa OCI. At anong OCI? Yun yung cash flow hedge reserve. So, saan natin ilalagay ang forward element? So, dito ang sabi ko, ilalagay natin siya or i-recognize sa profit or loss. So, gawin na natin. So, syempre, for the hedge item, ganun pa rin naman ang entrada. Same pa rin dito. So, ito pa rin ang magiging journal entries for the hedge item. Ang tanging iibahin lang natin is yung hedging instrument. So, let's start at the date of inception, July 1, 2020. Since ang ginamit natin dito is gross settlement, so gawin din natin dito gross settlement. Let us record both the USD receivable and peso payable. So, that is debit, USD receivable for 251,500 and credit peso payable also at 251,500. So, kung titingnan nyo, parehas na parehas yan dito. Siyempre, nagkakaiba lang naman kasi talaga sila sa recognition nung ating gain or loss. So, punta tayo ngayon sa next date, July 31, 2020. So, ang gagawin natin dito is we are going to recognize the gain or loss for the month of July. At saan natin kukunin yun? Dito natin kukunin. Pero this time, we need to separate the gain or loss related sa spot element and forward element. And yung i-recognize natin sa cash flow hedge reserve is yung, syempre, yung related sa hedging instrument. At ano ang ating hedging instrument? Yun yung spot element. Then, ang forward element natin will be in P&L. Kaya, ang ating journal entry will be coming from this schedule, yung change natin for the month. So, sabi dito, meron daw loss for the forward element na 400 pesos. Pero, nominal account. And that is other income or loss for 400 pesos. So, ito na yung amount related sa loss on the forward element. Pero, for the spot element, syempre, 350 and that is a gain. So, kaya tayo ay magka-credit ng cash flow hedge reserve for 350 pesos. And again, ito yung effective part. So, this time, since ang ating hedging instrument is only the spot element, so again, yung change lang sa spot element ang nilalagay natin sa OCI. And ganun uli, we are going to assume na all changes dito sa spot element are all effective. Kasi ganun pa din. Kapag merong ineffective, that will be recorded in P&L. And syempre, gaya na sinabi ko kanina, yung separation nung effective from ineffective, medyo mahaba-habang discussion yun. Kaya for simplicity, let's just assume that all changes are considered effective. Kaya lahat to ay nasa OCI. Then, ngayon, i-record natin yung decrease sa derivative. That is credit USD receivable 50 pesos. So, ngayon, punta na tayo sa August 30, 2020. So, unahin natin yung change sa spot element. Ang sabi rito, 400 pesos. At positive to, ibig sabihin gain. Kaya tayo ay credit cash flow hedge reserve 400 pesos. And again, sabi natin, this will be considered or assumed to be all effective. So, kaya ito ay lahat sa OCI. And then, yung change tayo sa forward element. Kaso, negative na to, 200 pesos. So, that is a loss. Kaya, other income tayo or loss, debit for 200 pesos. At meron tayong, syempre, change in the derivative or the USD receivable account. So, that is debit USD receivable 200 pesos. So, kung titingnan nyo, parehas na parehas yung entrada natin sa account title na USD receivable. Kung siya man ay in full o kaya excluded. Nag-iiba lang siya talaga doon sa treatment ng change doon sa gain or loss. Ngayon, punta tayo sa September 29, the date of settlement. So, dito sa September 29, 2020, date of settlement, so unahin muna natin i-adjust yung change in the exchange rate. So, unahin natin yung change in the spot element. Sabi dito, for the month of September, nag-change ang fair value ng spot element. So, that is an increase in 250 pesos. So, that is a gain. Kaya tayo ay credit cash flow hedge reserve for 250 pesos. Then, for the change in the forward element, sabi positive din at siya ay 850. So, this is again a gain. Kaya tayo ay credit other income for 850. Siyempre, para magbalanse, dapat may debit tayo na 1,100. At ano daw ito? Siyempre, this is the change in the derivative. Nag-increase ang ating derivative by increasing the USD receivable. Kaya ito ay 1,100 pesos. So, ngayon, dahil adjusted na-record na natin yung ating change in the exchange rates, pwede na tayong mag-settle So actually, for the settlement, parehas na parehas pa din. Kung ano yung ginawa natin dito, ganun din yung gagawin dito. So walang difference. Kasi nga, ang difference lang talaga is yung treatment ng spot element and forward element. So kaya copy-paste lang natin to. So debit cash USD 252,750, credit USD receivable also at 252,750, tapos debit peso payable 251,500 and credit cash in Philippine peso 251,500. So again, parehas na parehas ito. Nagkaiba lang talaga sila doon sa recognition ng gain or loss na ni-recognize natin for the month. Kasi nga, dito, hindi na natin sineparate yung spot from the forward. Pero dito, sineparate natin ang spot from the forward element. So ngayon, after we have settled the obligation resulting from the forward contract, sarado na yung ating USD receivable na account at peso payable na account. Ang natitira na lang is yung cumulative balance ng ating cash flow hedge reserve na nasa OCI at magkano ang cumulative balance ng ating cash flow hedge reserve na makikita sa OCI. Again, cumulative balance. Ibig sabihin, since the start. At magkano yun? That will be, syempre, yung attributable lang sa spot element. Kasi lahat lang naman ng attributable sa spot element, yun yung nire-record natin sa OCI. At magkano ang cumulative balance? That will be 1,000 pesos. So, ito yun, yung cumulative change in the spot element, 1,000 pesos. So, this is the cumulative balance of our cash flow hedge reserve in OCI. So, kung di ka sure, computein mo. 350 tapos 400 tapos 250. That is 1,000 pesos. Unlike dito kanina, kapag ang forward contract is designated in its entirety as the hedging instrument, ang cumulative balance ng ating cash flow hedge reserve is yung buo, yung hindi natin sineparate yung spot from the forward element, and that is 1,250. Kasi nga, hindi na natin hiniwala yung forward element. Pero dito, ang ating cash flow hedge reserve, OCI, only pertains to the spot element. So ngayon, ano ang gagawin natin dito sa cumulative balance ng ating cash flow hedge reserve in OCI? Siyempre, dapat natin itong i-reclassify to profit or loss. Kasi kailangan magkaroon ng offsetting. Kasi tayo ay naghe-hedging. At saan nangyayari ang offsetting? So normally that is in P&L, the income statement. And again, meron tayong two ways given by the standards for us to reclassify this into profit or loss. Yung isa, medyo indirect. Yung isa, direct reclassification to P&L. So, ngayon, dito na tayo. So, again, ang unang option natin is to adjust the initial cost of the non-financial asset. At ang ating non-financial asset is the inventory. So, at sabi ko nga, dito, kapag ang forward element is excluded, ang ating cumulative balance ng cash flow hedge reserve pertains to the spot element. At magkano nga siya? 1,000 pesos ang balanse niya. At yun ang ating i-adjust sa inventory balance. So, para isara, dahil may credit balance ang cumulative balance ng ating cash flow hedge reserve, para yun ay i-close, that is a debit to cash flow hedge reserve for 1,000 pesos at i-credit ang ating non-financial asset na inventory at 1,000 pesos. So, kapag ito ang ginamit natin for the hedging instrument, so ang inventory natin ay mababawasan by 1,000 pesos. So, magkano na siya? 252,750 minus 1,000. So, that is 251,750. At ano yung 251,750? Yun yung ating expected inflow at date of inception pero based on spot rate. 251,750. So, ngayon, ito ang entrada natin immediately after settlement on the same date, September 29, 2020. And syempre, on this date, wala pang mangyayaring offsetting sa profit or loss. At kailan mangyayaring offsetting? So, mangyayaring offsetting on November 5, 2020. So, indirectly, magkakaroon ng offsetting. Bakit? Kasi, yung ating cost of sales na marirecord on November 5, 2020 is already adjusted na ng OCI na ni-reclassify natin. So, magkano ang magiging cost of sales na marirecord natin dito? So, that is debit cost of sales for 151,050. Paano na kompyuto? Siyempre, ito ay 252,750 minus 1,000 or 251,750. Siyempre, times 3 units divided by 5 units. Yan ay 151,050. And credit inventory for 151,050. So ngayon, indirectly, nagkaroon ng offsetting sa profit or loss through cost of sales. Kasi itong cost of sales na to, adjusted na to. Kasi nga, inadjust na natin yung initial cost ng ating inventory. So, ito yung first option. Paano kapag yung second option? Hindi natin babaguhin yung original cost. Kapag sa second option tayo, ganun pa rin ang cost ng inventory, 252,750. So, kailan natin i-reclassify ang cash flow hedge reserve? Kapag nagkaroon na ng effect sa P&L ang ating hedge item. And again, ano nga yun? Siyempre, kapag nabenta na siya. Kasi doon tayo mag-record ng sales. So, anong entrada natin? Siyempre, ganun pa din dito sa hedge item. Debit cash, 204 at credit sales, 204. Tapos, magre-record tayo ng cost of sales, 151,650 at inventory, 151,650. So, ibig sabihin, ito as istong part na to. Hindi to magbabago. Pero, magbabago yung amount for the cost of sale kasi ma-adjust tong 151,650 through the reclassification ng cash flow hedge reserve natin to P&L. So, pwede na tayo ngayon mag-reclassify kasi on November 5, nagkaroon na ng sale. So, para i-reclassify, syempre again, debit cash flow hedge reserve OCI. Pero magkano? Dito, hindi buo. Unlike dito sa first option, yung buong 1,000 pesos, inubos na agad natin. Dito, hindi natin uubusin. So, proportionately ang ating reclassification, yun lang 3 units na nabenta. So, debit tayo ng 600 pesos. That is 1,000 pesos times 3 over 5. And syempre, para ma-reclassify ito sa P&L, dapat gumamit tayo ng nominal account. And that is credit to cost of sales, 600 pesos. So, ngayon, dahil dito sa entry na to, na reclassification natin for 600, maa-adjust ang cost of sales. Magkano ang magiging cost of sales? Syempre, yung adjusted amount ng cost of sales should also be similar to the cost of sales recorded here in the first option na 151,050. At paano? So, debit siya rito, 151,650, tapos nag-credit tayo ng 600 pesos. So, ibig sabihin, ang adjusted cost of sales is 151,050. So, now this ends our discussion for cash flow hedge using forward contract as the derivative instrument designated as the hedging instrument. And ang ating hedge item for this discussion is forecasted transaction. So, yun lang. So, class dismissed.